There's lots of low volume conversations, lots of muttering and riding around in jeeps.
You say that like these are bad things.
So we're talking about a new Nicolas Cage thriller movie which is out in cinemas. It's called Arcadian. We're in a near future. Normal life on Earth has been decimated. Paul is Nicolas Cage, that's his character. His two sons, Thomas and Joseph, they've been living a half-life. Every night after the sun sets, they face the attacks of a mysterious and violent evil. It's a bit mysterious, though. If you've seen the trailer, you might have a bit of an inkling as to what these things might be, whether they're human or creature form. I think it's pretty obvious, though, isn't it? So one day, Thomas doesn't return home before sundown, and his dad, quite obviously very perturbed about this, Paul leaves the safety of their farm to find him. A nightmarish battle ensues, but let's just say it's probably about 45 minutes into the movie and it's only a 90-minute movie, so that doesn't really bode well, does it, if you're not sure about when the action actually starts? It is halfway through the film.
It is a bit, and it's a weird one, isn't it? Because lots of bits of this film really reminded me of other films, and at various moments, partly because of the lighting and the colour palette and the kind of general misery of the way the films are shot, it reminded me quite a lot of War of the Worlds at various moments, but without the... You're doing that raised eyebrow thing, but without... it's kind of like all sorts of films where there's this mysterious presence in the world. There's like lots of films. But the one that kept coming back to me was War of the Worlds, because of this kind of weird presence that they were kind of scared of. And, I think because of the dimness of the film, I think it might have been shot in the UK, which is why the sun's not.
I think it was shot in Ireland, actually.
Yeah, it was kind of reminiscent of lots of things, but not quite as good as any of them, is my summary, really. It's like, lots of elements of it reminded me of other things, but it wasn't enough of itself, and it wasn't enough like those others either. So it was kind of like in this weird territory where things are a little bit familiar, but they kind of shouldn't be. Look, to be honest, Nicolas Cage, I had to Google him during the film. He's 60, and I don't mean to be unkind, but running around pretending you're in your mid-40s when you're 60 is something that you and I are going to be doing very soon. But if I was a movie star, I think I'd be playing to my age a bit more. And there's something a little bit incredible about the fact that he's clearly been around a long time, and he basically finds these two young boys when they're infants and decides to kind of adopt them and take them on his journey and stuff. And they've got this really close friendship. If I were one of those kids, I'd be thinking, come on, Grandad, slow down, keep out of it,
Hang on, we're almost of Nicolas Cage's age currently, so you've got to be careful there.
Speak for yourself. I'm miles away from his age. There's lots of things that are just slightly sort of incredible about it. I mean, I kind of like the kind of this supernatural kind of mysterious element. There's these kind of fissures that open up in the ground, and there's these huge kind of bug things that kind of come out, and they sort of preempt these sort of visits by these things, shall we say. The tension's building, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? And it kind of delivers on some of those things. It's not like it fails to deliver.
Yeah.
But there's something just a bit lackluster about the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that because I think end of the world movies can be a little bit depressing, can't they? They can be quite bleak and miserable, and that's understandable because that's the subject, that's the story. But other things have been done better that keep you more engaged. A Quiet Place I really liked. Didn't like the second movie, but I did like the first one, and I think that was done really well, and that kept me engaged. And it didn't seem too bleak. The second one was a bit bleaker. There's not too much wallowing in that. There's quite a lot of wallowing in this film. It's been directed by Benjamin Brewer. I think it's his first feature. So he is not only a director, but he was the lead visual effects designer on Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was just fantastic. So, obviously there's a different budget with this film because it's a smaller budget. And I think in some scenes that does show because some of the CGI is a little bit clunky. Let's just talk about what is plaguing them. Is at one point scratching on the doors, and you kind of think, well, hang on, these things have been spending 10 to 15 years, I think it's 15 years, isn't it, scratching at the doors. Obviously you can't see those big glass windows.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the tightest piece of writing, is it?
No,
it's not the highest quality plot. There's a lack of belief around lots of things. Some of that's the casting, some of that's the performance, some of that's the writing.
No, I thought the writing was what let the film down, to be honest. I thought the direction was okay. I thought the performances were good. They were solid. As an example of that, there's one scene where I think we're about 30 minutes in, and you kind of get a grip on what's happening with the story. But there's a game that two teens. Well, it's one of the sons and his neighbour. She plays a game with him, and she says, "Okay, let's play a game. Explain the apocalypse or the end of the world, in 10 seconds." And they both have a go at doing it. And it's almost like signposting, but it is over-explaining, and I found that really irritating.
What's so funny about the over-explanation of that is that I left the film still wondering what happened at the end of the world. I still don't really know. And in a film like that, you kind of get interested in that stuff. You want to know the journey they've been on to get to that moment. And somehow that was just still unanswered, but it wasn't some big, great mystery. It was just that they just didn't tell us enough, really, I didn't think. That. And you're just left with this kind of sense of dissatisfaction about kind of like, oh, okay, well, I know you're in this end of the world scenario. I know that there's this big menacing, force scratching at the doors and suddenly discovers the windows. But, how did it all happen? How did we get here? And that is kind of an important part of these kind of movies. And maybe they were trying deliberately not to do that, but it just annoys you, when there's no...
Exactly. And I found it kind of boring. I don't think it was because of the dark nature of it. There's lots of low volume conversations, lots of muttering and riding around in jeeps.
You say that like these are bad things. Riding around in jeeps and muttering. I could get paid to do that full time. That's what I could do.
And the music is very melancholic and piano. I mean, the soundtrack was kind of nice, but it had that real melancholic vibe about it, and there's a few TV series that have done a similar thing with music, and it's very kind of not completely depressing, but it's hinting that something is quite emotive, and I wasn't feeling any emotive pull on this at all. I wasn't engaged with the characters, didn't really care for them much, to be honest.
No, me too. And this thing about the kind of explanation of how they got there is this little sort of pre-bit at the beginning where when the titles are rolling, which kind of is giving you a little bit of the scenario of what's gone on. But we never return to that. We never get memories or flashbacks to that. We never get a sort of reconnection to that at any point in the film. And I think that's a real failing for me. It didn't square the circle. You can only have yin with yang, can't you? I mean, you can only understand the present in terms of the past. And we just didn't get enough of the past. We didn't get enough of that context to make that happen.
It is that old problem of we don't know enough to care, isn't it? Because we mentioned that on a previous review of a film where you don't really get so much of a backstory, and I think you need a little bit to care about the characters. There didn't seem to be much character development, and also Nicolas Cage isn't really in this film that much. I'm guessing he was probably the highest paid actor that within a limited budget, so maybe that's why I didn't get that much screen time.
My memory of the film is that he's sort of the central character, to be honest. I mean, you were right, though, in terms of minutes on the screen. It's probably on par with some of the other characters, but he's got the biggest presence there. Now, I've been thinking about this, and I don't know whether that's just because he's more familiar to me, or I don't think it was his performance. It might have been the hair dye. I can't remember, but there's a reason why he seems much more present in the film than some of the other people, some of the other characters. And to be fair, I don't think it's a terrible performance. It's just not quite good enough. The whole thing is just not quite good enough.
So we're going to go for a star rating on Arcadian. Over to you first, Chris.
I knew you were going to do that. I'm going to go, I'm sad to say, I'm going to go pretty low on this. I know, raised eyebrows again. I'm going to go 2.
I'm going 2 as well. I don't think it was terrible. I just found it really boring, and I wasn't engaged, and I could see what they were trying to do, but I think the story did let it down big time. I don't think there was a fault with the performances. I thought they were quite raw and quite gritty, it didn't feel glossy in any way. Some things like this, some movies like this do. I think actors do overact. I didn't think they overacted. I think it felt the performances were solid. It just I eye rolled a few times with certain scenes, and also I think it was flawed.
Yeah, it was flawed for sure. Actually, I forgot to tell you the thing that really irritated me about this film, and it irritates me about a lot of films. So it's unfortunate I'm picking this one out, but it just happened in this film, and we're reviewing this film. The kind of love interest thing, there's a kind of adolescent boy falling in love with adolescent girl thing, and I'm like, what's that got to do with anything? You know, it just didn't relate to anything. And because, as you quite rightly say, we didn't care enough about anybody, it just irritates you that these two are having this like silly kind of teenage crush on each other. It's like, why?
Yeah, it almost felt shoehorned. I mean, maybe to give that emotional aspect of it, which it was so far in, I just thought, what's the point? You know, because we should have had something like that at the beginning.
And various moments of it made me wonder if I was just the wrong audience for it, to be honest. I was kind of thinking, is this meant to be a young adult film? Is this meant to be for people who are just less emotionally developed? You know, it felt like, and my big barometer, I'm quite good at not being distracted in films. You know, I'm quite good. If I put something on, especially if we're going to review it, I want to watch it. I want to take it in. I want to get the proper experience. And occasionally we watch films where I just get distracted. You know, I kind of write notes on my phone and stuff, and then I'll be like, oh, suddenly I'm looking at my shopping list and I'm looking at, you know, what DJ set I'm going to play next week. And before you know it, you've spent 20 minutes on your phone, you've missed a load of stuff. But actually it doesn't matter because you don't care enough about the film. So I got distracted in this film in a way that I don't often, you know, and I'm often much more engaged, but I just wasn't engaged by this film, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I hear you. I completely agree. So it's out in cinemas. It is called Arcadian. It is also coming to Shudder, I think. And normally they, you know, have quite a lot of decent films on Shudder. We've reviewed quite a few.
Yeah.
In fact, there's probably one movie review floating above our heads. Yeah, do the Brady Bunch.
Not sure we should be doing chin shots at our age, but there we are.
Yeah, it's like Loreen, isn't it? We're Loreen inside that box.